There are civilizations remembered by their stones. Massive temples buried under sand. Broken columns swallowed by jungles. Cities turned into fossils of human ambition. And then there are others. Civilizations that ruled vast territories, controlled trade routes, shaped the fate of entire regions, yet left almost nothing behind. No monumental ruins. No great cities to excavate. No obvious remains to photograph. Only whispers. Only gaps. Only questions. This is the story of one of them. A civilization that dominated the sea and vanished so completely that history itself seems unsure it ever existed. The problem of absence. Archaeology is built on presence. Stones, bones, walls, objects that refuse to disappear. But what happens when power leaves no footprint? For centuries, historians believed that any true civilization must leave ruins. Monuments were seen as proof of greatness. Stone as memory. Yet the sea tells a different story. Water erases. Salt corrodes. Movement replaces permanence. And some societies understood this better than anyone else. They did not build to last. They built to move. A power without a capital. This civilization had no known capital city. No central metropolis crowned with palaces or temples. No single point from which authority radiated. Instead, their power flowed. Along coastlines. Through straits. Across islands and harbors. Their domain was not land. It was the sea itself. While land-based empires expanded by conquering territory, this civilization expanded by controlling access. Access to trade. Access to routes. Access to survival. If you sailed, you depended on them, whether you knew it or not. Invisible empire. Ancient texts mention them indirectly. Never as conquerors marching with armies. Never as kings ruling from thrones. They appear as intermediaries. Merchants. Pilots. Shipbuilders. Navigators. Always present. Never described. Other civilizations spoke of those who know the sea. Of sailors who could cross waters others feared. Of traders who arrived before storms and vanished after. They were not loud. They were necessary. And necessity is the purest form of power. Masters of navigation. Long before standardized maps. Before compasses became common. Before astronomy was fully understood. They navigated with precision. They read currents like others read roads. They understood winds as patterns, not chaos. They memorized coastlines in darkness. Their ships were lighter, faster, designed for endurance rather than intimidation. No towering war galleys. No floating fortresses. Just vessels that arrived and survived. Why build ruins when you can move? Here lies the key. They did not invest in stone cities because stone ties you to one place. Stone can be besieged, burned, captured. But a maritime civilization that relies on ports, ships, and knowledge does not need monuments. Their infrastructure was functional, not symbolic. Temporary docks, wooden structures, organic materials designed to decay. When a port lost its usefulness, they abandoned it. When routes changed, they adapted. History remembers stone, but history forgets motion, the deliberate disappearance. Some scholars believe their disappearance was not accidental. It was strategic. As land empires grew more aggressive, more territorial, more violent, remaining visible became dangerous. So they did what they always did. They dissolved, merged into other cultures, passed their knowledge quietly, changed names, changed languages. They became sailors for foreign kings, merchants under new flags, shipwrights whose techniques outlived their identity. They did not fall. They withdrew, traces without structures. So how do we know they existed? Through anomalies. Trade goods appearing where no trade routes should exist. Ship designs too advanced for their supposed time. Navigational knowledge that appears suddenly without explanation. And above all, through silence. The silence of ruins that should be there but aren't. A civilization that refused immortality. Most civilizations crave immortality. They build monuments to defy time. They carve names into stone. They beg history to remember them. This one chose something else. They chose influence over memory. They shaped the world indirectly, quietly, effectively. And when their time ended, they left nothing for conquerors to destroy. Only skills, routes, and echoes carried by the sea. What remains today? Every modern maritime power unknowingly inherited fragments of their legacy. Standardized trade routes, harbor-based economies, The idea that control of the sea outweighs control of land. Their greatest monument is not a ruin. It is the global system that followed. But one question remains. If they were so powerful, if they dominated the sea for centuries, why did they choose to be forgotten? That answer lies deeper. In fear, in survival, and in a decision that would erase them from history. And that is where our story continues. To understand a civilization without ruins, we must abandon the idea that history is built only by those who leave monuments. Because some powers operate best when they remain unnamed. Civilizations that point but never confirm. Historians have searched for this maritime civilization for generations. They have proposed names, regions, cultures, and yet every theory collapses at the same point. There's never enough physical evidence. Only patterns. Some associate them with the Sea Peoples, the mysterious groups that appeared suddenly around the 12th century BCE, disrupting entire empires and then vanishing. Others point to the Phoenicians, master traders whose colonies stretched across the Mediterranean, yet whose cities were modest, functional, and easily erased by time. Some even look further back, toward pre-Bronze Age seafaring cultures whose existence is inferred only through trade anomalies. But none of these labels fully explain the phenomenon. Because what we are looking for may not be a single ethnicity or kingdom, but a maritime system, a network, not a nation. This civilization may never have existed as a unified people. Instead, it functioned as a network. A shared body of knowledge passed between crews, ports, and generations. Navigation techniques, shipbuilding secrets, rules of conduct at sea, codes of neutrality and exchange. Membership was not defined by blood or territory, but by competence. If you knew the sea, you belonged, and if you didn't, you depended on them. The sea as a psychological weapon. Land empires fear the unknown. Borders are lines. Cities are fixed. Enemies can be counted. The sea is none of these. It shifts. It hides. It swallows evidence. This civilization used that fear. They did not need armies when storms could do the work. They did not need walls when distance was protection. Their greatest weapon was unpredictability. They appeared where no one expected them, arrived before news could travel, left no trace once gone. To land-based powers, they felt omnipresent and unreachable. Why empires cannot destroy them? You cannot conquer what you cannot locate. Land empires sent armies to burn cities, but found only abandoned docks. They seized ports, only to realize the routes had already shifted elsewhere. They demanded tribute, but had no king to threaten. There was no center to strike, no head to cut off. The civilization survived not by resisting, but by slipping away. The economics of invisibility. Their power rested on trade, not territory. They controlled choke points, straits, islands, harbors at the edge of known maps. They decided what moved and when. Grain, metals, timber, knowledge. When they allowed trade, regions prospered. When they withdrew, economies collapsed. And yet, no one could accuse them. They were never officially in charge. They simply weren't there anymore. The choice not to build. Building monuments is a declaration. It says, we are here. We will remain. This civilization rejected that message. Their structures were designed to vanish. Wood instead of stone. Rope instead of iron. Harbors shaped by use, not architecture. Even their settlements were often seasonal. Occupied. Abandoned. Reclaimed by nature. To them, permanence was vulnerability. The fear of being remembered. Here lies a darker interpretation. What if they feared being remembered? History shows a pattern. Once a civilization is known, is studied, then copied, then conquered, visibility attracts enemies. Memory invites invasion. By remaining obscure, they avoided becoming a target. They chose survival over legacy. The silent spread of their knowledge. Even without ruins, their influence leaked into history. Ship designs improved suddenly, without clear origin. Navigation techniques appeared fully formed. Maritime laws emerged that assumed shared customs. Someone taught these things. Someone passed them on quietly. Their civilization did not end. It diffused, absorbed, not destroyed. As empires rose, Greek, Roman, later others, they absorbed maritime specialists. Pilots who knew hidden routes. Sailors who could cross open waters. Builders who understood hull dynamics. These people did not bring flags. They brought skills. Their identity dissolved. But their expertise became indispensable. History's blind spot. Archaeology favors what stays still. But seafaring cultures move. Their cities float. Their roads disappear daily. Their borders shift with tides. We search the land for answers. But the truth lies underwater, or nowhere at all. The paradox of ultimate power. This civilization controlled the most important domain of the ancient world. Not land, not cities, movement, and yet they accepted anonymity. They ruled without being named, influenced without being crowned, survived without being celebrated. Perhaps they understood something others didn't. That history remembers the loud, but is shaped by the quiet. And now we must ask a deeper question. If this civilization chose invisibility, what event finally forced them to disappear completely? Because even the most adaptable system can break. And when it did, it vanished so thoroughly that even memory struggled to follow. That moment, that fracture, is where the story turns dark. Every system, no matter how adaptive, eventually encounters a force it cannot evade. For this civilization, that force was not an army. It was not a rival empire. It was something far more dangerous. A shift in the world itself. When the sea turns against you, the sea is a partner, but never a servant. For centuries, this civilization thrived by understanding its rhythms. But history records moments when those rhythms break. Sudden climate shifts. Violent storms lasting decades. Rising and falling sea levels. Coastlines erased and rewritten. What had once been predictable became hostile. Ports vanished overnight. Safe harbors turned deadly. Routes that sustained trade became traps. For a civilization built entirely on movement, stability mattered. And stability was gone. The age of collapse. Around the end of the Bronze Age, something extraordinary happened. Multiple civilizations fell almost simultaneously. Cities burned. Trade networks collapsed. Empires that had stood for centuries disappeared within a generation. Historians call it a collapse. But collapses rarely have a single cause. They are cascades. This maritime civilization depended on interconnected systems. When one link failed, others followed. And when too many broke at once, even invisibility could not save them. A world no longer worth navigating. Trade requires trust, predictable partners, reliable demand, safe passage. But during periods of widespread instability, trade becomes dangerous. Ports that once welcomed sailors turn hostile. Famine turned cooperation into violence. Local rulers seized ships instead of paying. The sea stopped being a network. It became a battlefield. For the first time, movement was not freedom. It was exposure, the decision to disappear. Faced with this reality, the civilization made a final choice. They did not attempt to dominate the chaos. They did not build fleets for war. They did what they had always done best. They adapted to extinction. Rather than die defending a system that no longer functioned, they dissolved completely. No last stand, no final war, no heroic fall, just a gradual withdrawal, becoming something else. Some became inland settlers, abandoning the sea entirely. Others integrated into rising powers, hiding their origins. A few may have retreated to marginal waters, remote islands, dangerous coasts, forgotten routes. Their identity fractured. And without identity, there can be no ruins. The possibility of intentional erasure. Here the story grows unsettling. Some scholars argue that their disappearance was not just passive. It was deliberate. They erased their own memory. They stopped telling their stories. They avoided recording their knowledge. They discouraged permanence. Why? Because memory invites repetition, and repetition invites exploitation. They had seen what happens when knowledge spreads without control. They chose silence. Knowledge too dangerous to preserve. Maritime mastery grants leverage. Control over supply chains. Control over movement. Control over economies. Such power, in unstable times, attracts destruction. By allowing their knowledge to fragment, they prevented it from being weaponized. A self-imposed forgetting. A sacrifice of identity to protect the world, or themselves. Echoes in myth. Though they left no ruins, traces survived in myth. Stories of sea peoples who appear and vanish. Legends of sailors who know impossible routes. Tales of islands that move or disappear. Myth becomes the last refuge of lost civilizations. When facts vanish, stories remain. Why we feel their absence. Modern humans sense something missing. We see sudden jumps in nautical knowledge. Unexplained efficiency in ancient trade. Laws and customs that assume a forgotten past. We inherited systems without origin stories. That absence feels wrong. because something important was removed, the fear that they never truly left. And now comes the most disturbing possibility. What if they did not disappear? What if they simply changed form? Modern global trade is maritime. Modern power depends on logistics. Modern influence operates through networks, not borders. The same principles, different scale. Perhaps this civilization did not end. Perhaps it evolved beyond recognition. The pattern repeats. Control movement. Avoid visibility. Influence without rule. These strategies did not vanish. They became doctrine, in corporations, in trade alliances, in systems that govern without monuments. The sea taught them something timeless, that the strongest power is the one that leaves no target. A civilization without a grave. Most civilizations leave ruins because they die violently. This one left nothing because it chose survival, or because it chose something worse. To abandon its own name, to become an idea rather than a people, to exist everywhere and nowhere. There's only one part left to tell, the meaning of their disappearance, what their story reveals about power, memory, and the future, and why civilizations that refuse monuments may be the most dangerous of all. History teaches us to look for stones, broken columns, collapsed walls, ruins rising from the earth like scars. We believe that what mattered must leave remains, but this civilization challenges that belief. Power that refuses to be seen. They understood something most civilizations never did. Visibility is weakness. The moment power becomes visible, it becomes measurable. And once it can be measured, it can be challenged. This civilization ruled without announcing itself. No kings to overthrow, no capitals to sack, no monuments to destroy. They removed every target. Why ruins are a trap? Ruins are evidence of ambition. They say, we believe we would last forever. But history punishes that belief. Stone invites envy. Monuments provoke conquest. Memory attracts violence. This civilization avoided all three. They built nothing that could be turned against them. Their absence was their defense. The ultimate strategic choice. When the world changed, when climate, conflict, and collapse made their system fragile, they did not cling to identity. They abandoned it. This was not cowardice. It was calculation. They understood that civilizations die not when they lose power, but when they refuse to adapt, becoming an influence instead of a people. By dissolving, they achieved something rare. They escaped history. Their techniques survived. Their principles endured, but their name disappeared. They became structure, not story. And structures are harder to destroy than nations. The modern reflection. Look at the world today. The most powerful systems do not rule territories. They rule movement. Supply chains, trade routes, information flows. The logic is identical. Control access, not land. Influence behavior, not borders. Remain essential, not visible. We call this progress, but it is an ancient idea. Why we still search for them? We want ruins because ruins reassure us. They tell us that power can fall, that dominance leaves debris, that every empire has a grave. This civilization denies us that comfort. It left no proof of its end. Only proof of its intelligence, the warning hidden in their story. Their disappearance is not just a mystery. It is a message. Civilizations obsessed with being remembered build monuments. Civilizations focused on survival build systems. One becomes history. The other becomes invisible. What if they were right? Perhaps permanence is not strength. Perhaps the desire to be remembered is a flaw. This civilization chose impermanence. And by doing so, it avoided destruction. Or at least, it delayed it beyond recognition. A civilization without ruins or limits. Without ruins, there is no closure. Without closure, the story never truly ends. We cannot point to their fall. We cannot mark their grave. And that unsettles us, because it means power does not need to collapse. It can simply change form. The final thought. The greatest civilizations may not be the ones we excavate, but the ones we inherit without knowing. The ones that shape the rules, set the paths, and then disappear. Not in fire, not in conquest, but in silence. And the sea remembers. Stones forget. Cities decay. But the sea keeps no records. It carries only patterns. And somewhere within those patterns lies the echo of a civilization that understood something profound. To rule the world, you do not need to leave a trace.